What's up, this is Brandon Smitley from BrandonSmitley.com, bringing you a video showing my lower body warm-ups. I got a question on YouTube asking me to kind of walk through basically my training session, but that would just take way too long because this video is long enough. But I thought I would at least break down my warm-ups. I've also gotten asked this on the Elitefts Q&A. Clients ask some stuff on warm-ups, so just going to show you what I do. Doesn't mean it's the end-all be-all, but at least gives you some ideas. I always start every session out with foam rolling. It's just light. The only idea here is just to kind of get loose. I basically foam roll what I feel is tight for that day, and then whatever is chronically tight or gets overused quite a bit. So in powerlifting, it's usually going to be, at least lower body wise, lats, upper back, glutes, hamstrings, quads, basically everything around the hip, and then I also do some ankle stuff, and just always find this helps get me loose, starts to get me warm. I'm moving around, rolling around, if nothing else, at least gets blood flow going. So as you can see, I go through a different series of stuff. This is probably the longest clip that I've got. You can also see me look at some rust accumulating on the bar as I actually physically see it. Just didn't feel like cutting that out, so you can see me get distracted with my non-diagnosed ADD. But like I said, basically go with upper back and lats, and then just work my way down, go to my glutes, cross my leg over to try to attack my piriformis a little bit. Usually that stuff's usually alright, but try to be preventative and keep my hips healthy. Don't have any hip issues right now, but trying to keep it that way. Then basically go on down to the hamstrings, adductors, roll around a little bit, attack things from different angles. If something's tight, I'll spend a little more time on it, but otherwise, just go through the motions, just get it a little loose, and that's really all I want. I know some people think that you should be kind of almost tight when you get to the bar. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel like you should be able to get to depth with the bar, unless you got a lot of issues going on, but I don't really have any issues. I'd like to keep it that way. Something Bob Young has talked to me is, this is the shit that he didn't do, and he now says, look at the way that him and Dave are. And I take that to heart. Two really bright guys were in the game a long time and did some great things, so just taking some preventative care early on. You'll see the same thing whenever I do the upper body one as well. It's usually about the same. Usually a little less lower body intensive and a little more upper body intensive, but I still roll out my legs on my upper body days, and I'll explain that in the other video. But the big one for me is getting my quads and up in the IT band and hip flexor area. That's what, if anything, gives me the most problems. It's certainly that, so you'll see me take care of that at least from multiple angles. And I use a PVC pipe because a foam roller for me just doesn't cut it anymore. I could definitely probably get away with it if I'm sore, but generally I'm coming in fresh to a lot of these sessions, and PVC pipe has done me really well. I also use the rumble roller from time to time. I tend to use that a little bit on my upper body days more than my lower body days. I just like the way the foam or the PVC pipe feels, especially on my quads and up in the hip area. Moving on, go to some split stance stuff. This is for my hip flexors, so there's different ways you go about attacking it. This for me feels the best, and I think it's the most applicable to powerlifting, because it actually has you standing, and even though we don't do any kind of lunging or anything, I like to do everything pretty much as athletically as possible. I consider myself an athlete, even though some people would not, so I try to train in that fashion even when that comes to warm-ups. You will see me go through a few different phases. Basically get comfortable down there, slowly sink. You can tell that my right side is definitely going to be worse than my left. Once I feel like that's gotten a little loose, raise my hands overhead, get that psoas to relax a little bit, and then do some rotations to also work some more mobility while keeping that there. This is certainly a tough thing for me. Doesn't look that tough, but I certainly feel it up in that upper pocket area where the hip flexors are. Left side's not as bad, like I mentioned, but do things on both sides. I just spend a little extra time on my right side than my left. and then I'll explain something moving forward here in a little bit of that as well. Looking really just to keep my ribs down. If you're wondering, my hands are there. Most people try to overextend, and I want to still try to keep my spine neutral and ribs down like I do when I squat. So that's the big key points here. And then you'll feel that hip flexor loosen up as you run through this. Then I got some leg lowering. I usually do about 10 per leg. I usually do a few more on my right than my left, because like I mentioned with the hip flexor. So trying to get that right side a little more loose than the left, considering that's where I have a little bit of issues. But just go back and forth. Key things here: keep your quad flexed, toe pointed towards you, or dorsiflexed, and basically try to slowly get that leg down to the ground. I run through these kind of quick, but you definitely feel the hamstring stretch, and then you work on each leg independently rather than just stretching your hamstrings. Again, this is a little more sport specific, but I like the way that it feels on my hamstrings. I get a good deal out of it. I definitely feel that my squat pattern improves after I do this, but I do this before I do my hip flexors, or after my hip flexor stuff, because a lot of people think they have tight hamstrings, but really the way their hip flexors are tight, it's causing their tension on their hamstrings to increase, when really they just need to work on their hip flexors, and their hamstrings will kind of relax a little bit. So I hit the hip flexors first, then attack the hamstrings, and that kind of lets my anterior pelvic tilt kind of come back a little bit closer to neutral before I get under the bar. You can then see me here doing some assisted squats. I just go with a really wide stance, try to stay really upright, and slowly get a little lower. Feel this in the groin, hamstrings. So when the actual active part of the warm-up starts to kick in, start getting moving around a little bit more, getting the hips warm, knees warm, things like that. Then going on, after I do a few of those, usually I do about 10, go to some half kneeling adductor mobilizations. These are also on Chris Duffin's video if you haven't seen that. I also do them as well. Really just focus on squeezing that glute on the opposite leg, and then pushing that adductor out and feeling that adductor lengthen. If you have calf mobility issues, make sure to do these with a flat sole or without a shoe, but I don't have any of those issues, so I just keep my squat shoes on. My left side is a little more bound up than my right, so I tend to give it a little bit more attention, but again, this is all in the adductor, glute, hamstring kind of tie in towards your groin. You'll definitely feel it if you stay nice and upright and squeeze that opposite glute to get over. Really good mobilization technique. Then go to some single leg glute bridges. The only thing here I'm doing is really trying to get my glutes to activate. That's the only goal. It's really not to do anything else. Again, trying to still keep active, slowly start to warm up, and get everything moving, because I'm basically almost done at this point. Then go to some overhead squats with a dowel rod. I just like these personally because they force me to kind of stay upright. I know my overhead squat is not the most beautiful thing in the world, but it's active, it's working the squat pattern, getting my glutes and hamstrings and quads warm and activated. The dowel lets my chest open up, so I'm able to get my hands underneath the bar easier. And then again, I'm working on keeping that back nice and vertical as well. Move on to some bird dogs, 10 on each side. These have been popularized with Dr. Stuart McGill and Brian Carroll's recent material. This is just to get my abs firing. I also get some glute firing here. And again, just more active and warm movements. Then after this, I basically move on to the reverse hyper for 42 total reps at 290, and then I'm ready to get under the bar. But this is the actual warm-up I've got. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section. And as always, keep up with all my stuff over on elitefts.com.